Kia ora no tātou. Hello everybody. No mai. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Starting Fitness. I'm your host, Tiki Harawira, and this is episode 2. Now you may have noticed I've come up with a name, and we've gone for Starting Fitness Podcast. Now how I got this name was, so originally we were just going to go with something generic like the Tiki Harawira podcast, or I think TikToks was the winner, or was going to be the winner. Then I was doing a bit more research on names and how to stand out in your niche, and how to stand out as a podcast. And it's hard to, unless you're early on in the podcast game, it's hard to stand out and to compete with all these other generalized podcasts. So, and it's hard to compete with all these other big names like the Joe Rogan podcast, the Tim Ferriss show, Rich Roll, like all of these podcasts. So all the research I've done, it was advised that you niche down and you narrow down your niche. Now my niche obviously was fitness, but even then the fitness space is still quite a big niche. So I had to figure out a way to niche down even more. Otherwise I'd be competing against other big podcasts like Mind Pump and the Rich Roll podcast, like I mentioned before, and all these other big fitness podcasts, health and fitness podcasts that are in this space. And when you're competing against these big timers, if you don't have a specific audience, they're just going to drown you out, because that's where people will go for the information instead of coming to you. Now I had to think long and hard for a name, and some of the tips that they give you to think about your name is think about the things that you'd like to talk about. Now for me was fitness, obviously, as I'm a personal trainer, and I also wanted to use this podcast to document my journey as I venture off into becoming full-time into fitness, and hopefully owning a gym or opening up a franchise or pursuing a personal training career. Now I don't have enough knowledge to speak solely on business, so I needed to mix the two: fitness, my personal training journey, and fitness tips like losing weight, building muscle, like tips that I can help other people on their journey in this fitness space. Now I come across a podcast called Starting Strength, based on the strength program protocol, and I really like that name, the Starting Strength name. So I try to come up with my own little spin on it, and I was just searching up different names I could use, and I thought about Starting Fitness, but I just thought it was a bit, I thought that name would be taken by now then, because a lot of the names now for podcasts, because there's so many now, most of the names are all taken. But to my surprise, there were none. There were none under Starting Fitness, so Starting Fitness it was. Now the backstory of why I went with Starting Fitness was because this podcast was for me to help people starting their fitness journey. So whether you're a first-time gym goer or you're just starting out your fitness journey and you just need a bit of help, this podcast was directed for you. Whether that would be fat loss help, how to build muscle, how to track calories, all that jazz, all that stuff, that the information that you need when you're first starting out in your journey. But I also wanted to talk about my experience and my journey as a personal trainer. So then that also ties in with that name, because it's you're starting your fitness journey as a personal trainer. And then I also wanted to talk about my journey going into the gym space and opening my own gym or managing my own facility or however that may be, and that also ties in with that. And that's how all these things I want to talk about all tie in with starting fitness. Whether you're starting a fitness journey, you're starting a personal training journey, or you're starting your business, your gym journey, this podcast is for you. And selfishly, for myself, down the line, we can interview some people who have paved the way and who have done this before, and we can pick their brain and get knowledge from them and find out how they done it and their journey on how they done it and made this leap. We get to ask them questions, we get to figure out how to do this, some tips and tricks, and everything else in between. Now that's how the name came about. So welcome to Starting Fitness, the number one fitness podcast in the world. Anyway, so today's episode, today's show, it's going to go just a quick one. I just wanted to go through some advice I wish I got when I was first starting out in my personal training journey. So I was fortunate enough when I first started personal training that I had the guidance of my partner, of my better half, Sam, who's also a personal trainer. She was my teacher. She taught me the ropes. She guided me through this journey. And not everyone has a Sam. Not everyone has someone who you can lean on and you can ask for advice and who can kind of guide you through this. And hopefully I'm your Sam. Hopefully I can be your Sam. Just like everyone needs a Sam. Everyone, just like Frodo, if you know their reference, Sam is the real winner, the real hero in Lord of the Rings. If you don't know the reference, then watch Lord of the Rings. I want to be your Sam. I want to be your guide. And here's some advice I wish I got when I first started out my personal training journey. Now, tip number one, and this is in terms of how do you get your first client, because this was the question that I always used to ask myself, was how do you even get your first client? Now it may be hard at the start because you have to swallow your pride and you have to have a bit of humility. But tip number one is offering your services for free, especially when you're first starting out. I know when you're first coming into it, you're fresh into the industry. You want to change the world. You want to make heaps of money. You want to get right into it. But it's not like that. You have to build that client base and build that experience. And to build that experience, you have to be doing the reps, you have to be doing the work, you have to be working with other people. And to work with other people at the start, you have to offer your services for free. This gives you the experience on working with others, training someone else. It's easy to train yourself, and people think because it's easy to train yourself, you know how to train other people. But it takes practice and it takes time to learn how to train other people. Now, because you're offering your services, this is giving you the time. This is giving you more time to gain more knowledge and get more confidence in your ability, and to just find your voice, find your mark in this industry. Now that's the tip number one. Tip number two is, and this was in terms of getting over the fear of teaching your first class. Now, another stepping stone from training one person is training 10 people or 15 people or however many people in your class. Now, when I first started, I was nervous, I was scared, because I've never been the best public speaker, so teaching my first class was a bit of a mission for me was a bit daunting for me. But luckily I had Sam, and she told me to back myself, and that's what tip number 2 is to back yourself. Trust in your ability and trust in your experience and trust in your knowledge. Now, a little exercise I used to do was I used to bring and what you can do on whatever the field you're doing, it doesn't have to be personal training, or whatever field you're in, bring your skill or bring your field to the front of your mind. So for my instance, with personal training or training people, bring that to the front of your mind, and you want to rate yourself out of 1 to 10 how good you are, or how good you think you are on this. You are at this skill. Now, personally, I'd say I'm about a 6, maybe even a 7, and that's what I rate myself. Now, for a 7, if you think about it, most people in the world, especially the people in your class, are about a 1, maybe even a 2, and that's what they'd rate themselves in fitness. Now, when you put that into perspective, when you put it that way, you can think to yourself, you know what, I do know what I'm doing, I do know what I'm talking about, and when you look through it through this lens, it gives you more self-confidence, and it gives you the belief that you can do this, you can actually do this thing. Now, that's tip number 2. That's a little exercise that I used to do. I still do sometimes when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by the activity at hand, and that's a little exercise I like to do. And that's tip number 2, is to back yourself and trust your ability and trust your experience. And this kind of ties in with the next tip and that's how to overcome the imposter syndrome. And the imposter syndrome is a huge phenomenon that happens to nearly everyone. I'd bet my money and say that everyone has gone through this imposter syndrome feeling. And what this is people think they shouldn't be here, or people think, why should they don't. So basically, people don't back themselves. They don't back their ability. They think they shouldn't be there. They think, oh, why should I be teaching this class? I don't know, I've only just started my journey. Now, I recently listened to a podcast, this Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett, and he touched on this topic, and it really resonated with me on his thoughts on imposter syndrome. Now, how he put it was, if you think about it, the reason why you're feeling like an imposter is because you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, you're out of your comfort zone, and you're doing something that you haven't really done before. And when you're doing these things, these are the signs of growth. So when you're out of your comfort zone, when you're doing things outside, doing things that you don't normally do, you're growing, and it's a good thing. If anything, you should always be feeling like an imposter, because you always want to be growing. The imposter syndrome is a sign that you're in the right circle, that you're doing the right thing. Because when you're doing things that scares you, when you're doing things that is out of your reach or out of your comfort zone, these are the signs that you're growing and you're trying to be better, and you're trying to improve as a person. Now, if you're not feeling like an imposter, if you're not feeling this fear, it's because you're in your comfort zone, and you've boxed yourself in, and you've given yourself you're limiting your beliefs on the things that you can achieve, and you're not growing. You're taking it easy, you're not taking risks, you're playing it safe, and these are all signs of you going nowhere, of you staying exactly where you are. And now in life, when you're not growing, when you're not moving forward and improving and getting better, you're getting worse. So if you can change the language that you'd say to yourself, if you can flip the switch and change this mindset of thinking that imposter syndrome is a bad thing, this is where you will make big gains in your life. Whatever you're doing, whatever it is you may be doing. For me, it was training. I used to have this feeling. I used to think, why should people listen to me? Why would people pay me to personal train them? I've never done it before. I've never had any clients. Why would they come to me? But if you scrap that and you think to yourself that I'm trying something new, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to upskill myself, and this is where I'm supposed to be, this is where I'm meant to be, then the same thing again, you get that self-confidence and you back yourself. And this is the beauty of self-development. You're forever changing, you're forever trying to be better, and yeah, always try to be better, always learn, always do new things, always take that next step, because you never know what might come out on the other side. And it's the same thing with myself doing this podcast. I had this imposter syndrome feeling that why would anyone listen to my show or listen to this podcast? Why I don't have the right equipment, I don't have the big following, I don't have anything. I'm just a Māori boy chasing his dream, and I back myself. Even if people doubt me or I make a fool of myself, or I don't even follow through with this. But if I just back myself now and I don't even care what others think. And here we are, we're episode 2 in the podcast, and hopefully plenty more to come. Now the final tip that I wish I had been given when I first starting out was, and this I think I briefly touched on this in the last point, to never stop learning, to always remain a student. Because there's never a point where you'll know everything, and that's alright. And if you're willing to learn new things all the time, if you're putting yourself out there, if you're trying to be better, like I said before, if you're not moving forward, if you're not trying to be better, you're getting worse. And if you're not constantly trying to learn new things or upskilling in your field, you're going to get left behind, because there's always new things coming out, new studies and new research and new ways to do things. And that's another thing actually, is to have an open mind, because there's more than one way to do something. Something might work for some people, like a keto diet might work for some people, and a vegan diet might work for others. But if you hold on to these ideas, if you hold on to these ways of thinking, like if you're too close-minded, you get left behind, because you think that there's only one way to do things. But if you're willing to be open on learning new things and taking on and trying new things, then you're just going to make your life in this industry a whole lot easier. Because at the end of the day, there's always someone better than you, there's always someone who knows more than you. And if you go into things as a student, like a sponge, and you just soak in as much as you can and try and learn as much as you can, that's how you build your craft, and that's how you get better, and that's how you win. Anyway, that's enough from me. I hope if any beginner personal trainers are out there listening to this, I hope you guys got some value from this. And even if you're not, if you're listening, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me that you're listening to the show. Now, if you got anything from it, please share it, like it, subscribe to the channel, And yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys all have a good day or had a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.